There we go. Okay, I'm gonna wait for everybody to get back on real quick. Sorry about that. I don't know what my technical issues were that time, but such is, you know, virtual workshopping lately. Let's see, I'm gonna hold this, give it a minute, see who pops on. There's one person, great. So we have a small class live tonight. That's fine, a little bit more intimate. A good thing about this workshop though is because it is videoed or recorded. Oh, there we go. So now it's telling me stuff. So I fixed something and I don't know how I fixed it. But I'm getting comments now, that's great. And somebody else has popped on. So a great thing I was saying was that you can do this after right now. You don't have to do it right now. I'm glad that you guys are here. It makes it a little bit more exciting. The last workshop we did, we had somebody who came in and ordered a couple more kits and made a set, or they may have made them for gifts. So that's something that's really cool about the workshops. A lot of people are taking the techniques that they learn and applying them to further projects and doing their own thing. Love seeing that. When I see stuff coming out of the kiln and I recognize the names on it, and I see that you're having fun with the techniques, that's really great. So today's workshop is Flights of Fancy. I have more people watching than I actually have in the workshop right today, so that's perfect. That means probably everybody is here and we can get started. This technique is a feather resist technique. And we've done workshops here before that are other resist techniques, like wax resist, paper resist. As a matter of fact, next month's technique, I'll show you guys that a little bit later while we're waiting for paint to dry, is paper resist. But the resist techniques are kind of cool because it creates a more interesting piece without necessarily having the figurative artistic skill. So today's is feather resist. The first time I saw this, I thought it was such an awesome workshop, so I immediately showed it to my boss, and we rolled with it for an in-person workshop a couple years ago. But I thought that this would be a fun one to do at home and totally doable at home, so we decided to revisit it here. This one here, you can see with the feather resist actually exactly how it works. I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of chattering first. And you can see that the actual feathers that are in the kit that you have are what we're going to use to make the feathers. So you don't have to have, say, the artistic experience to make an actual drawing of a feather. You're going to use the actual feathers for that. I'm going to set this aside, and someday I'm going to figure out, I'm wondering how many workshops in it'll have to be before I figure out how to make it so that you guys can see stuff, the finished product, and I can also work. I'm very envious of the lady at Mako who has a big setup, and she's got all these tables and heights and cameras and stuff, so you can see what she's doing, and you can also see the finished piece and everything. Mako's got a lot larger budget than we do, so that would explain that. All right, getting us started. What you want to do is you want to take your paint colors, and your paints are in little cups. I've got my big old bottles here, and you want to divide your paint colors up. You want to divide them into undercolors and overcolors, okay? For mine, I'm doing pretty much like the sample here. So I've got a darker turquoise and a lighter turquoise because I like to vary it a little bit underneath. It's pretty subtle with those two colors if you happen to choose them. Over here is the darker turquoise. And then up here on this side is the lighter turquoise. They are pretty close in person, but not as close as it looks on the camera. The top coat, I have not done it with more than one color on the top coat, but you could do that. When you're dividing up your colors, you want to pick ones that are similar to go together. So I've got my two different turquoises because they're similar. And I've got my navy blue for my top coat. The navy blue actually would blend pretty well with these, but you want your darker colors, you want to save them for the top. So this is one that we did I don't know if you guys saw us or not, and I'm not sure if you can go back and see it if you missed it, but channel, what is it called? CW, which I guess is channel 17, came to our studio and talked about all of the fun stuff that we're doing in adapting to COVID and are changing our marketing around a little bit. And this is one of the ones that one of our teens, actually our teen customers, started for us, so that while she was working in the background, she was demonstrating the feather resist technique, and I was talking about it. So Chloe on this one, she used, and this is a nice way to show you what I mean by grouping light colors together. She used red, orange, and yellow. And she blended the red and the orange really well. Because of time, she's a very good artist, but because of time, she didn't blend the yellow as well. It doesn't really matter, but that's how you want to divide your colors up. So this one was red, orange, and yellow on the underside, and actually probably we're going to do navy blue on top on that one, just to show you how it's working. So I'm going to do a bowl. My kids keep breaking all my bowls. Everybody being at home is lovely. We get to enjoy each other's company. It's really hard on bowls and dishes and stuff. I don't know if you guys are finding that too, but my dishes are breaking at an alarming rate. So I'm going to do one of these bowls, and then my boss is going to take it out of my pay probably. What I'm going to do is I'm going to choose my my bottom colors, and I'm going to do the outside of my bowl. You guys will want to do the top of your plate most likely. Going to take it, and here I'm going to tilt my camera down a little bit so that you guys can see what I'm doing. And let's see, yeah, that works pretty good because I can still see the comments. Perfect. So I've got my colors here. I'm going to just paint this on. Have fun with it. You want to get a nice coat on there. And I've got the two different turquoises. I'm going to add some darker turquoise here. We've done it before where we've blended colors like this, and it's been important because of the technique to make sure that they were blended well. With this, because it's underneath, it doesn't really matter as much if it's blended as well, because it's going to be probably less obvious. It's going to be a lot less likely that it will be obvious. But just as a review for how to blend these colors, because most of you guys I've seen before, we're going to do a technique called double loading. I'm putting the lighter turquoise on one side of my brush and the darker turquoise on the other, and I'm going to hold that up close so you can see it. I apologize for the shaking. I don't know if I've ever mentioned it to you guys before, but I have a tremor. So I always look like I'm a nervous wreck even when I'm not in fact a nervous wreck. So I've got the two colors on there, and when I brush them on at the same time, then they blend, okay? And that creates a nice blend. If it's not good enough, if I want it blended more, I can take one of my paper towels, kind of clean my brush off a little bit with it, and just work back and forth a little bit. Okay? Anyway, we're going to cover the whole piece this way with whatever colors we want underneath. And I'm kind of wondering how this will look if I'm not real particular about the blending. Since these colors are pretty close together, I think that that's going to work out just fine. Or maybe I've been watching a little bit too much Bob Ross, but I'm thinking it will be just fine. So I'm covering that. I want to cover the whole thing, and I want to do that for two reasons. One is that I want it to be nice and thick when I put the feathers on there. The other reason is because we're putting the feathers on there, when it comes back to the studio, we are not going to be dipping it in the clear glaze like we usually do for you guys. I don't know if everybody is aware of that or not, but when you paint a piece here at All Fired Up, we'll tell you anything you don't paint will turn out white. Like this bowl here, which is the last remaining bowl at my house, actually. I brought it in to see how it would go with these newer bowls, and I think I like it just fine. The only thing I painted on this bowl is the navy blue and then the lighter blue stripes that are down here along the bottom. I didn't paint this part of the bowl. This is the color of the pottery. So normally anything you paint would be, or don't paint, would be the color of the pottery. But that's because we dip the whole piece in a clear glaze. Because of the feathers, we don't want the feathers in our big bucket of clear glaze. So, excuse me, because of that, we're not going to be dipping this. So you want to make sure that every surface is covered. So I've got my underside of my bowl done, which for you guys would be the top of your plate, the undercolor of that. Now I'm going to go ahead, and while that dries a little bit, I'm just going to make sure I cover all the other surfaces of my bowl with whatever I want it to be. So there's my bottom, because again, I'm not going to be dipping that. And here's my, just in case you're visual like I am, here's my lesson. Do you see how the turquoise is gleaming when I tilt it in the light and the white is not? The reason for that is because I forgot that lesson when I did this sample, and this part of the pottery here actually has no glaze on it because we were not able to dip it. If we actually wanted to use this piece as something other than a sample, I would need to go back and paint that so that it would be sealed, because right now it is not sealed. So that is our object lesson. Make sure you cover every surface. So my bottom is your top, technique-wise, because I'm going to put the feathers here. I'm going to flip this over now, and I'm going to paint the inside of my bowl. You guys are going to flip yours over, and you're going to paint the back of your plate or platter. You're going to paint the entire back of your plate or platter. Don't be like me and forget to paint. So I've got the whole thing painted one coat. Earpieces are a little bigger than mine, so I'm going to give you a little bit of time to catch up. And while you're doing that, I'm going to talk to you about things that are coming up. First thing that's coming up is Valentine's Day. For Valentine's Day, we have a kids kit that's a little bit different. There's not a class involved in it. It's more of a Valentine's treat box. This is it here. It comes with 2 mugs in it and some paints. It comes with some stickers, which you can actually put on the piece and paint and do sticker resist. And then we'll peel the stickers off. And that, it's okay that it's white underneath if you choose to do that, because we can dip that after we peel the stickers off. Feathers don't come off quite as well. So the feathers will burn off in the kiln. The stickers will remove before we dip them. And it comes with some brushes and also some little goodies in there. There's a candy necklace and some candy hearts in this one. So that's a kid's thing that's coming up. You can actually order them now whenever you'd like. I personally kind of like the kids one and kind of want it for myself. If you want something a little bit more grown up, another thing that we're doing right now is the adult date night, and that is online, probably explained a lot better than I will do, but just to give you a kind of a hint to look for it. The adult date night, the way it's working is there are some pieces that you can pick from. One of them is the white wine goblet. There's a red wine goblet. The beer stein. And then these are more my speed. Nice big mugs. Two different shapes of the mugs. Those are the pieces that the adult night comes with, and it's the same box as the kids box, only instead of having the mugs in it and a couple of stickers, well, some stickers and stuff, it comes with the brushes, it comes with an assortment of paints, so you don't have to pick it out, so you don't have to risk surprise or ruining the surprise for anyone. We just give you a nice assortment of colors to work with. And it comes with something that we're calling pottery tattoos, which are really cool. They're tissue paper that's got a pattern on them already. And you lay them on the piece and wet the tissue paper, and it comes off on the piece, kind of like the temporary tattoos that you do at kids' parties. So that's in there. There's a bunch of other stuff in there. And another thing is we're partnering with some of the local businesses, some of the local restaurants, and you can also get a gift certificate from Villa Barone, Tortilla Press, or Circles, and in either 50, 75, or 100, and we will make sure that that is in your kit for you. So it's kind of an entire evening in a box for you. Except that the pieces are too big for the box, so the pottery pieces we put on the side. All right, so that is dry. I'm ready for my second coat. We're gonna do the same thing again. Before I set this down, I'm noticing that I missed a spot here, so I'm just gonna make sure I hit that. We're gonna do a second coat all over this. And do it the same way, mix in your colors if you'd like, or some people, I know there's at least one person that opted for just one color underneath, just the turquoise. So we're gonna do a nice coat all over the entire, I guess we'll call it the presentation part of the piece. For me, the presentation part of the piece is the outside of the bowl. Switching between my colors, and see, they blend really nice. Covering that, a nice second coat. And you may notice that this coat is a little bit thicker. I'm doing this nice and thick. Should really start bringing out the Lazy Susan when I do this. And this is why I'm doing it thicker. Because this is the point where it gets fun and we start using the feathers. I'm going to take some feathers, and I'm going to stick them in that wet paint. And I'm going to press it down flat. This will actually be easier for you guys because you're using plates. And I'm going to dip my brush in the paint, and I'm going to glue the feather down with the paint. It helps if you brush in the direction that the feather goes. If you end up with pieces of feather stuck to your brush or stuck to the piece, don't worry about it. They will burn off. Make sure that you're generous with paint in this part. Okay, let's see. Donna has sent us a message, so I am going to tilt up and see what Donna has to say. I will be right. Thanks for that heads up. So Donna was just giving me a heads up that she's just watching tonight and she's going to do the piece later. That's actually a great option. Some people learn by doing. Some people are more auditory learners, and they tend to enjoy themselves and be more successful if they just kind of watch the whole thing and then go back and do it after they've listened. So you can see that I have really stuck that feather down. I'm going to go through and I'm going to add more feathers. You guys all have a peacock feather. Now a peacock feather on my tiny little bowl would look, it could look cool. It may look ridiculous. I'm going to probably skip the peacock feather, but I'm going to show you where my peacock feather is on here, just so that you get what you're expecting. This big one here actually is a peacock feather. See? And of course they won't look turquoisey, and then I repeated, or I did another little bit over here. I cut my feather so that I could do more over here. So over here, this long skinny stuff is peacock feather, and over here is peacock feather. Everybody only got one, but like I said, you can cut that if you want to. Now, if you're like me and you either paint slowly or you talk the whole time you're painting and your paint starts to dry, the feathers are not going to stick anymore. So this is what I'm going to do. First of all, I'm going to take this opportunity, since it's already dry, to pick out a couple more feathers. I tried to put a variety of feathers in for you. You can see some of the feathers all kind of have their own personality, and I tried to put different batches of feathers in so that you would get the different personalities. This one is a lot more flowy, so it's going to give me a kind of a more almost ratty, for lack of a better word, raggedy edge to it, like this feather here, instead of more like the peacock feather or these purpley feathers are going to give me. That's what it's going to do. But right now it's not going to stick at all because I let the piece dry because I was talking. So I'm just going to put a thin coat of a little bit more on there. And now it sticks very nice. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to paint some feather. And let me pick this up and show you guys. You can see how this is stuck real nice right here. It's not sticking as nice up here. Part of that is because my bowl is round, and part of it is because it's wet, or it's kind of drying out. So I'm going to stick a little bit of paint there behind it, and then I'm going to paint it down. There you go. If you've ever tried to glue something down and you realize you missed one of the corners, that could happen with this. And you do just like you did with that. You just kind of lift it up a little bit like I did. And instead of putting glue under there, I'm going to put a little bit of paint under there. So I'm going to keep working my way around the bowl. You guys are going to keep working your way around your plate or platter. Make sure, see right here where you can see a lot of feather? I want to put a little bit more paint on that just to make sure it sticks down nice. Okay, I'm going to keep working with that. And I'm trying to decide if I'm going to put paint on, or feathers on the inside or not. I'm using different colors. It doesn't really matter because the color of the feather is not going to show up, but I'm looking for feathers that have different textures to them. Again, if it starts to dry out, I'm going to add a little bit more paint. Stick it on there, paint on top. Gonna keep working with that. This is why I gave you guys crazy a lot of paint. So I think I do want to add a little bit of a peacock feather. I'm going to look for a smallish one. And I'm gonna break it, or at least bend it so that I can get it going the way I want. And let me think, how do I want to do this? I think I'm gonna put it right about, wait, do I want to put it on the inside? No, that's a little bit too crazy looking. I'm gonna put it right here, and I actually have some overlapping going. If you can see here, I have a feather underneath. That's fine, I can do that. That won't hurt it at all. So this is drying out a little bit. So again, I'm gonna wet that with a little bit of paint. I'm gonna put that peacock feather on there. Kind of stick it down a little bit and stick a little bit of that paint on there to really get it down. Keep going with that. Now this one, I'm going to sit it down a little bit because I'm having a little bit of trouble. If you don't like the way it looks, pick it up. You can pick it up and you can reposition it. That is what happened to me just now. I was not happy with that. And actually, I think I'm going to try something different. I'm going to put this part of the feather here. It's kind of like wrestling an octopus. I've got that part of the feather there. Going to stick it down real good. And later when this is dry, I'm going to bend this around into the inside of the bowl. I would suggest, if you would like to try that, bend it around to the back of your piece. But that's a very definitely later thing. There we go. Now the extra bit of feather is not in my way. Got this stuck down. Now we're going to let that dry. Once we have as much feather on as we want and positioned, you can kind of move them a little bit if they're not exactly where you wanted them, but positioned the way we want it, as much feather on as we want, and it's sticking. We're going to let it dry out a little bit to pretty much dry. Peacock feather works better on flat surfaces. So I'm going to sit that aside, let it dry. I might have to hold it for a minute with my finger. I'm going to hide that from you guys because that's not turning out well. I'll have to fix that off camera. So this part here is working out well though. Okay, I'm going to rinse my brush out. While you guys are finishing up on your feathers, rinsing your brushes out, I guess I'll wait patiently actually. I was going to tell you more, but that might be a little bit too much information at one time. All right, giving you another minute or two. If you're following along and need me to wait, just pause for a second and do some kind of comment to that effect. Otherwise, in another minute or so, I'm going to go on to the next step. Running out of off-screen space to stick things. Okay, I'm not getting any pleas to wait, so before we finish and go on to the next step, I want to show you guys this. This is a kid's kit. A lot of times the adult workshops come in this same box, but this is actually a series of 4 canvas workshops. They start tomorrow. That's the very last one. So if you've got a kid at home who would like to do some canvases, definitely go online and order that last kit. You can pick it up tomorrow before the workshop. The kids ones I do a little bit different. For the kids ones I do the Facebook Live like I'm doing, but most of the kids are younger, or a lot of the kids are younger, and oh my goodness, it does start at 7. I started this whole workshop way too early. I'm so sorry, Erin. I'm going to finish that sentence, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to do a little bit of review, okay, for the people that are just now signing on, because I'm seeing Angela and I'm seeing Erin. Yeah, I'm spacing out. I got here a little early and I thought that I was running late and was working desperately to get online, and I accidentally got online a little bit early. So I'm going to go back and do those first steps. And yes, Angela, you do paint before gluing. Let me pretend that I have not done that part, okay? All right. So I'm actually going to do a quick what to do. I should have pulled that off. Oh, well. All right. For those people just clocking on, I apologize. I'm having a very spacey day here apparently, and I got on a little bit too early. First thing you're doing, this will actually give the people who are wishing I wasn't moving so fast a little bit of time to catch up. First thing you're going to do is you're going to divide your colors up into your undercolors. For me, that's turquoise, the 2 different turquoises, and your overcolors. You want your overcolor to be darker. Another way to do it, if you're not into the subtleness of the turquoise and the navy blue, some people have a broader range of colors. So this one here is yellow, orange, and red. Those will be the undercolors, and then I'm actually going to do navy blue on top on that one. So you're going to divide it up between the under and upper colors. You're going to do a nice coat of the undercolors all over it. We are not dipping this, so you do want to paint all of the surfaces. You're going to let this coat dry a little bit, like we traditionally do between coats in the studio. And I talked a little bit before about blending the colors. It's not as big a deal because it's underneath as it is in some of the other techniques, but if you want to be very subtle about blending the colors, you want to dip half of your brush in the lighter color, or one, I'm doing the lighter turquoise, so you could say half in yellow and half in orange. I'm doing half in light turquoise and half in dark turquoise. And then when you brush it on, it's going to blend nice. That's called wet on wet. So you're going to let that dry. I'm going to pick out a couple feathers while I'm waiting on you guys. I was telling everybody I tried to put a variety of feathers in there so that you would get different textures, because the different kinds of feathers do different things. The peacock feather right here, I guess I should put that actually on the screen. This is the peacock feather right here. The peacock feather is very distinctive. You get the long skinny tendrils. You get the put together part here. Of course you don't get the turquoise because that doesn't transfer. These blue ones are really soft, and when you put them on you get more of a kind of, I gotta think of a better word than ratty, but you get kind of a fuzzier look. And then these pink ones are fuzzy at the bottom, but they're very stiff at the top. So this is going to be a lot more defined at the top there, a lot more like the peacock feather. So once that is on, you've got the one coat on and it's dry, you are totally caught up, because apparently I did a lot of yammering in the last little round of this. Does not hurt at all to repeat things, so this is fine. You're going to do another coat a little bit thicker and go back and forth between your colors like you did. And you can see that this is very wet. Now you're going to literally stick the feather on there. I think it was Angela that was asking me if you paint it before you stick it. Yes, you paint it because we're using this paint like glue. I'm going to stick that feather on there, and I'm just going to kind of pat down a little bit if I can. You guys are doing the front of your plates with the feathers predominantly. Most people are going to choose to do that, and that actually is the reason we chose the plates instead of, say, a bowl like we might have done if you were in the studio, is because it's easier to get them to lay flat on the plate. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to glue it down with the paint. I've got it nice and juicy on the brush. I'm going to start at the spine of the feather, and I'm going to brush out in the direction that the feather goes, and also the direction that I want the feather to go. So like the peacock feather, you can kind of drive it around on your plate a little bit, which, Erin, this is why it doesn't hurt to back up a little bit and try again, because I didn't even mention that last time. You can actually physically kind of move where the feather is. Okay. I'm going to pick my plate up, my bowl up, so you can see another area. Now this time I'm going to do this pink feather, and I'm going to do it there. See how this is starting to dry out? I'm just going to slap a little bit more paint on there so that it's wet. I'm going to stick my feather on there, tap it again. this is a new one. I have never been too early for a workshop before. Usually I sign on and everybody is there waiting for me because I tend to be a minute or two late for things. Okay. So if you notice, I'm holding the stem down with my finger because the quill of this feather is a little bit stiffer. And I'm going to try to get it to stick down a little bit. And that one's popping up a little bit. That's all right. So I'm going to work my way around my bowl. You guys are going to work your way around the top of your plate. Adding in the feathers. Trying to decide what I want to do next. I'm going to do that one again. It dried out, so you guys guessed it. I'm just going to add a little bit more paint so that it'll stick. I'm going to tap that one down. And you can cover this with a lot of feathers, or if you would like a rest area where there are not feathers, go for that. That can be really good for the composition. If you look at this one here, there's some spots that I intentionally didn't put feathers. The reason I did that was because if you completely go crazy and cover it and use every feather I gave you, which is probably definitely more than you need, it's not going to be as obvious that it's feathers because you're going to have stuff all over it. So Angela and Kelly, you guys are just about caught up, okay? Again, this is drying out, so I'm going to put a little bit more on there. Going to get a little bit more paint out. And I could use one of these here. I'm trying to decide what I want to do visually. Or I could use a little bit of my peacock feather. Now the peacock feather you might have to cut. I was talking about that before. So that is drying out on me again, so I'm going to put some on here. I'm going to take this peacock feather, and later when the outside is dry and I'm finished, I'm going to do my inside and I'm going to bend this around. It'll help that the peacock feather will be a little bit drier then so that I can actually direct it a little bit more. But for now I want a little bit of peacock on the outside. So I'm going to tap that down the way I like it. And I got to thank you guys because this is laying a lot prettier than it did the first time. So there you have it. If you mess up, as long as you don't go crazy and end up with like 20 coats on the outside, 10, 20 coats, you'll be fine. But this is laying prettier, so it's fine that I pulled it off and tried again because I actually like it better. I'm gonna get that stuck down. And I'm gonna hold that down with the brush down here at this end because it's popping off. There we go. And then over here, same thing, I lost some up there. So I'm gonna stick it down again. Now I'm gonna let that dry. And now everybody is caught up. Just for the fun of it, since it's going across the bottom and I have to paint the bottom anyway, I'm gonna stick that little bit of peacock feather tendril that is coming across the bottom of the plate. I'm gonna stick it on there. Okay, I'm gonna pause for 1 second and just make sure that that phone is not somebody from the workshop. it is not. So we're just going to ignore that. We're letting this dry. That could be the person ordering the very last kids workshop. So if you were thinking about that kids workshop for your child, you might want to get on that after this. Okay, we're going to let that dry. While that's drying out a little bit, I'm going to actually sit this aside because I have one that's already dry to show you guys the next step. I was saying earlier that the CW came and the morning show very early in the morning. I think they got here at like 5:30 or something crazy. They came and did several segments with us. It was great having them. And during that, we were showing all of the things that we're doing, adjusting our sales technique and the stuff that we do here to the new restrictions because of the virus. And one of the things they were featuring were all the workshops we're doing, which we really appreciate that they were doing. But we had people in the background, students working on the pieces for us. Chloe, who's one of our very talented teenage customers, she actually is the daughter of one of my coworkers, came in and she was working on this piece, which is the adult workshop. She was working on the feather resist technique so that we could show them how it worked. And this is the first step that you guys just did. You can see she's got yellow, orange, and red, and then she's got the 3 feathers on there. Once it's dry like this, we're ready for the next step. I'm going to rinse my brush out. I'm going to switch to my dark color. I said earlier in this video that I had never done it with multiple colors on the top, but there's really no reason that you can't. The major thing that you want to do so that the feathers are nice and striking is you want to make sure that there's a contrast between the colors underneath and the colors on top. And the best way to do that is to do something darker on top. I love navy blue for the tops of these pieces. It always makes the feathers pop nice. And the nice thing about navy blue or black is that it only takes 1 or 2 coats to get it solid. So while yours is drying, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the last, well, not the last step, but the last technique step. You can see here that I've got some spots that are a little bit thicker with the navy and then some spots that are a little bit thinner with the navy. By this point, we've probably got 3 coats minimum on our piece. So it doesn't really matter how many coats you do on the top. You just want to do enough that you're creating that contrast between the feathers, the background color under the feathers, and the top color. So what I'm going to do is mine is super, super dry, so mine is not going anywhere. Yours, you guys be a little bit gentle when you're painting this, just in case it's a little bit wet underneath. You're going to put your dark color on there or dark colors. I'm thinking I might do, no, I'm not going to go crazy with that. So I'm going to do navy blue over the whole top of mine. I was thinking for a second there maybe doing more than one color. I'm going to paint that on. I'm going to do just like I did the underneath, where I'm going to pull it in the direction that the feathers are going, just in case I should accidentally loosen something a little bit. That will ensure that it doesn't mess up the design. Let me hold this up so you guys can see it. And again, the navy blue is one of our weird colors. No matter what, I mean, it turns out navy blue, but it definitely looks purple, especially on the screen. So you can see that I'm painting this, painting a nice thick coat on there. Now see, this little feather end stuck up on me. I'm just going to press it down a little bit, And I'm gonna kind of pretend that it's there. Like, I'm not gonna try to get the paint underneath it. You know how when you paint, you mask out something with masking tape when you're painting your house, and it always bleeds. But you could brush and get the kind of shove the paint under there. I'm not gonna shove the paint under there. If you look at it, you can see that even though it lifted up, there's still a little bit of yellow under there. I'm gonna leave that there so that it looks like I have a stem. Cover the whole thing with the navy blue. I'm gonna sit this down because I'm making a rattling noise with my shaking there. Going in the direction of the next feather. I hear a kid outside going, "Mom, Mom." Sounds like my kids. Painting in the direction of the feathers. Chip of something on there, but get that off. There we go. I'm gonna let this dry. Now, earlier I mentioned this. We're not dipping these pieces because of the feathers. A lot of times there's little pieces of the feather that are going to stick to your piece. You don't have to worry about them because the kiln gets to about 2,000 degrees. So they're going to burn off, but we can't have that feather in our clear dip or our clear glaze that we dip every piece in. So you are going to need to paint every surface of your piece, because we're not going to dip it, and that the paint is what will make it food safe, and you're going to need to do the 3 coats on that. Some people already did a coat when I started this the first time, but once you've got the feathers on there, it's kind of messy and it's a little bit tough, so I like to just wait until it's all done and make sure I do my second and third coats, or all of my coats on the back or inside of my piece. Like, I haven't done the bowl inside of my bowl yet. This right here, if you watch this, you can see I did this once already, but just in case, you can see the shiny parts are where the paint is. I forgot, actually this piece was the first one I ever did with the feather technique, so I wasn't really thinking it through. Well, I was thinking it through, but part of the reason you do a sample is to see where things can go wrong and what you need to change when you actually teach it. And one of the things I realized was that since we aren't dipping these because of the feathers, it would have been really helpful if I had painted the entire bottom of the piece, because right now this is the white bisque like in the studio, and that is not food safe. So if we're using this for anything other than a sample, I would need to paint this and put it back through the kiln. The thing with that is this is a bigger piece. The reason that we haven't done it is this is a bigger piece, and we can put larger pieces back through the kiln, but there's a risk that they will crack, so we try really hard not to. Let me again check and make sure that's not somebody from the workshop. Oh, it is. Hold on one second. Hi, Sally. Are you okay? Right. You can do it anytime. Mm-hmm. Yes. Exactly. Yeah, actually you won't need to put in the code because it'll be right on our Facebook page. And if you wait about 24 hours, it should also show up on our website. Okay? People at home, did you guys hear that? Yeah, this weekend is totally fine. All right, the video's a little bit long because I started it early. I don't know what I was thinking, but I accidentally started it early, so I backed up and reviewed a little bit, which was probably fine for the people at home. Nobody's complaining. I'm thinking that I probably was going too fast anyway. Okay, thanks a lot. Bye-bye. No problem. Bye-bye. And this is the major difference between us and the big professional companies like Mako. It's a little bit more real, and I apologize. It's kind of like you embrace your strengths when, you know, that's one thing that I've learned this year is that I need to relax and just accept who I am and, you know, do my best, but not worry when things don't go totally according to plans. Like, I really thought that I wasn't going to ramble tonight, but apparently I am. So we're waiting for this to dry. Back to the workshop. We're waiting for this to dry. And while we're waiting for it to dry, because we do want this to be dry because the paint will lift up a little bit potentially, and we don't want that. So we're going to let that dry. And while we're letting that dry, I'm going to tell the people who just got on, look on the website and on Facebook. We've got a really cute little package of 2 mugs and some Valentine's goodies and paints and brushes and stuff for the kids for Valentine's Day. We've got a really great date night package that we're trying this year. One of the things we miss the most is you guys being in the studio. And Valentine's Day is always a big deal for us. People would come, they'd bring hors d'oeuvres and snacks, and they'd have a really nice romantic date. We'd do the tables up all cute and everything. We can't really do that this year. So instead of doing that, my boss picked out some pieces that she thought would work well with it, that you can pick from. And we also partnered with some of the local restaurants because we're all trying to support each other. And you can get from us without an extra trip for you. You can get a Villa Barone gift certificate, a Circles gift certificate. Circles is the Asian place right down the street from us here on Powell, or the Tortilla Press. And those gift certificates are $50, $75, or $100. You pick the amount that's right for you. And it's not a markup. We don't make any profit off of that. It's just a convenience that we wanted to offer to you guys so that you can have a whole little package going for your Valentine's sweetie and potentially surprise them. You know, if you're driving all over town, stopping places, they're probably going to catch on. So we did that package up. We've also got one more, just one more kit left for the kids workshop series that starts tomorrow. We're doing canvas with them. And if you have any pieces here, you want to go ahead and try to pick them up because you'll get a January bounce back coupon. And that's good for 25% off one piece, which is a really great deal. You don't have to paint the piece when you purchase it. You can take it home and save it for when it's, you know, later in the winter when it's getting a little slow and there's not as much to do. And then either pick out paints and come pick them up from us and take them home and do a to-go kit, or you can bring the piece back into the studio and paint it whenever you like. Our next adult workshop coming up, I'm kind of on a resist kick. I'm trying all the different resist techniques. This is paper resist. It's kind of cool. It's a lot like cutting a snowflake. My sister-in-law lives in Hawaii and they do these beautiful applique quilts there. Was kind of thinking of that and looking at some of their techniques when I did this one. But this is another one that you don't have to worry about being able to painstakingly draw this and have it come out totally balanced. I've got some tricks that relate to paper resist for making that happen. And that's a very versatile technique that we'll be doing next month. So mine is almost dry. I'm gonna go ahead, and it's okay if it's not quite dry. It'll make it a little bit easier to get the feathers up. Actually, if it's not, I'm gonna go ahead and do my second coat on this. You want this to be a nice medium thickness coat. Like, you don't want it to be too thin, but you also don't want it to be super thick like it was, you know, we were laying it on pretty thick there when we were doing the gluing down of the feathers. It doesn't have to be that thick. So we're gonna make sure that we get everything down. almost done that. Now once you've got the second coat on there, instead of waiting for it to dry, you're going to grab your feathers, grab them by the end that would be in the bird, and you're going to pull them up. Depending on how dry it is, it might be a little bit, you might have to be a little bit more forceful or not. If you lose any of the feather in there, don't worry about it. If it's a huge chunk, you can pick it up, you know, and start again. But if it's just like a little tiny bit, don't stick your finger in there trying to get it out. So there's my great reveal. I've got this disgusting feather I'm going to throw away. This is my plate. And you can see this is why I was telling you to use the lighter colors underneath and the darker color on top, because especially after that's fired, it's popping now, but it's going to seriously pop afterwards. You can see here the little bit of blue dye from the feather. Don't worry about that. That will burn out. And you can see little tiny tufts of feather. Don't worry about that also. That'll all burn off too. And we're going to do that to all of the feathers. We're going to pull them off. Be careful. Take your time getting the end. Go ahead and give that a pull. That one's really cool because she painted a little bit of red and a little bit of orange in that area underneath. So that looks really awesome. And she's got one more feather on here. Having a little bit of trouble with the end of that feather, like getting the end of that feather. So I'll just get a pencil point or a pin, or even the pointy handle of a paintbrush. And I'm gonna pull that off. I'm gonna just kind of lift the end of that feather. Sometimes getting the end started is kind of like getting a splinter out. You know, that first little bit there is the hardest part. There we go. Okay. So I finally what worked was I took my fingernail and I pushed it against the spine until a little bit broke loose. And now I can reach into the dry part and grab a little bit until I get enough to pull it up. Oh, that's going to look really awesome. So that's the fun part of the piece. Before you bring it back to us, you're going to want to make sure all the surfaces are painted. I'm going to flip this over. When Chloe painted this, she accidentally got a little bit too much on the back here. So I'm going to either sand that down, or I'm just going to take my paintbrush handle real quick and kind of chip that off. Because nice and thick is one thing, you know, three-dimensional, quarter-inch sticking out is another thing. That will not work as well. So now I'm going to take whatever colors I want and I'm going to paint the back of the piece. I just am going to do the back of this piece plain. But if you wanted to, you could repeat, like if you really enjoyed this technique and you had a lot of feathers left, or even just a couple feathers left, if you want to do the feather technique on the back, you are certainly welcome to do that. Just make sure every part of the pottery piece, every part of your plate or platter is covered by 3 coats of paint, or maybe as much as 4 or 5 coats of paint. Okay, because like I said, we can't dip these. So I'm going to go ahead and do the coat on here. And before you guys are gonna get to watch me let paint dry again. So if you did the wet etching piece with us last time, you're going to know how to do what I'm going to do next. And I figured out which supply it was that I forgot. I thought since I forgot what time we started, I would be off the hook on forgetting a supply. I always forget something. But you have a little stick in your skewer in your kit, and that is to sign your name. Okay, so how many dark top coats did I do? On the front, I love Angela. Angela always asks the questions that I should be reiterating. On the top of the piece, I did 2 coats. Some people, when I did this in the studio, the last time I did it, only did 1 coat, and they had more of this look in the middle here, which is actually hard to see because of the glare, but you can see a little bit of the turquoise underneath. But 2 coats, especially if you're using a darker color, should be plenty on top. If you feel like it's just not enough, you could go as many as 3 coats, but I definitely wouldn't do more than that. Because you've already got 2 or 3 coats underneath the feathers. Normally 6 coats total would be really pushing it for too much paint, but since we're not dipping these, that's not as big a deal. So the answer to your question after all of that rambling is I did 2 coats of the darker color on top. On the back of the plate, I'm going to do 3 coats over the whole thing. I'm not going to do what I did here and forget to paint an area. I'm going to paint the whole thing. So this is going to dry. I'm going to paint another 2 coats on it. And then the part that I'm always afraid to tell you, or I'm going to forget to tell you, is after I've got 3 coats on the back, I want to put my name on there. When I was doing up these kit boxes, I went looking through our brushes, for fine brushes for signing names. And there really wasn't anything that was nice and thin and I thought people would be happy with. So I put a skewer in your kit. By the way, make sure that you get the rim of your plate. Like, take a look at that once this is dry and you flip it back over. Because again, we're not going to be dipping this. So anyway, I got that skewer and put that in instead because if you did the wet etching class, you know that that makes beautiful thin lines. So you're going to let this dry. You're going to do 1 more coat, and then you are going to etch your name into it using your skewer. So I'm going to let that dry a little bit. While that is drying, I'm going to root around here and see if I've got anything to use as a skewer. Here we go. You can use it. You know what? I might not have put skewers in the kits. I might have put toothpicks in the kits. Either way will work. So you're going to take that, I think I did, I put toothpicks in there. You're going to take that toothpick and you're going to scratch your name into the piece so that we can make sure that we can get the piece back to you. If for some reason you don't remember to do that, or just don't want to, or do it and don't like it and paint over it, when you come into the studio, be sure to tell us that you need to put your name on there and we'll give you a writer tip bottle. Okay? So that is the whole workshop. I mean, I need to do 1 more coat on the back here. And I need to clean up my mess, but y'all don't need to watch that. But I'm gonna make sure I get my 1 more coat on there. Pretend I did that. Then I'm gonna flip this over and I'm gonna admire the front again, but I'm also going to take my brush and kind of tap it around the rim. Just to make sure that I've got paint on the rim. Okay? I actually rubbed off the top coat in some places, but the underneath colors, I can see they're still there, and that'll look kind of pretty giving it that little bit of halo of the underneath, so I think I'm going to leave it like that. That's our piece for tonight. I hope you guys had a good time. Again, I apologize for starting a little bit early. That is so totally not like me. My boss is not going to believe that it actually happened. Tend not to, and my mother definitely will not believe it if she pops on, which she often does, which is kind of fun. But anyway, I apologize for that. I hope you guys had a great time despite that, and hopefully we used it for good, like we try to do everything with, you know, the changes with COVID, and it gave you a little bit of extra time. Hope you had a great time. Next time we're going to do the paper resist. In March, we've got these really cool head vases that I've got some stuff going on, so I'm going to be posting something soon asking for input on that. March is Women's History Month. Guys can come to these workshops if they would like to, and you can of course do anything that you want to on your pieces. But I think I'm gonna be asking what women or women artists you really admire, so that we can do some templates for you guys for the vases for women in honor of Women's History Month. So that'll be March. That's what we're thinking. You never know, we might come up with something else in the meantime. This is our feather resist piece, and I hope you guys had a great time. Be safe, and we will see you next month hopefully, and maybe in the studio. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.